Let's begin. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes knight, check. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes pawn. Checks in this position are: bishop takes knight, check. The answer is bishop takes knight, check. King takes bishop. Queen to g4, check. Another puzzle. The threats are: bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes knight, check. Knight takes knight. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes bishop. The checks are: bishop takes knight, check. The answer is knight takes bishop. Pawn takes bishop. Knight takes queen. Let's see the next puzzle. The threats are: queen takes pawn, check. The checks are: queen to h2, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen to e5, check. Queen to b5, check. The puzzle is solved using: queen to b5, check. King to e3. Queen takes rook. Next, here are the threats: queen takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position: queen takes pawn, check. Bishop to h2, check. The best move in puzzle position is bishop to f3, g3. Bishop takes pawn. Let's see the next puzzle. Here are the threats: rook takes pawn, check. Checks in this position are: rook takes pawn, check. Answer to this puzzle is e2, h7, check. King to h8. Rook to a8, check. King takes pawn. One more. The threats are: queen takes rook. Queen takes bishop. Knight takes pawn. Here are the checks: knight to h3, check. Knight to e2, check. The best move in puzzle position is knight to e2, check. King to h1. Knight takes queen. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are the threats: rook takes pawn. Here are the checks: rook to b6, check. The best move in puzzle position is rook to c1, d4. Rook takes pawn. Another one. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes rook, check. The checks are: queen to c7, check. Queen to b8, check. Queen to d8, check. Queen to c5, check. Queen to b4, check. Queen takes rook, check. Answer to this puzzle is queen to b8, check. King to a6. Queen takes queen. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. There are no threats in this position. Checks in this position are: knight to d2, check. Knight to e3, check. Knight to g3, check. Knight to h2, check. The best move in puzzle position is knight to g3, check. King to h2. Rook to h1, checkmate. Let's continue. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are: rook takes knight. Queen takes queen. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes knight. Queen takes knight. Pawn takes pawn, check. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Bishop to h6, check. Queen to g5, check. Queen to f4, check. Pawn takes pawn, check. The answer is a2. Queen takes queen. Promotes to queen, check. King to d2. Queen takes rook. Let's see the next puzzle. The threats are: rook takes pawn, check. Rook takes pawn. Here are the checks: rook to c8, check. Rook takes pawn, check. Rook to b8, check. The puzzle is solved using: rook to b8, check. Bishop to d8. Rook takes bishop, check. Rook to e8. Rook takes rook, checkmate. Next puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. King takes knight. Checks in this position are: d3, check. The puzzle is solved using: king takes knight, a4. King to d6, a6. King to c7, a7. King to b7. Promotes to queen, check. King takes queen. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The answer is bishop to g5. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes queen. Next, threats in puzzle position are: rook takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The answer is queen to b4. Knight to e7. Queen takes knight. Next puzzle position vulnerabilities are: queen takes rook, check. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes rook. Knight takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Queen takes rook, check. Knight to f2, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Knight takes rook. Pawn takes knight. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen to h2. Queen takes queen, checkmate. Let us go to the next puzzle. The threats are: knight takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. The checks are: knight to b6, check. The puzzle is solved using before king to d7. Pawn takes pawn. Let's continue. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. The checks are: queen to g8, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen to g6, check. Queen to f5, check. The puzzle is solved using queen to f4. Rook to d1. Rook takes rook. Next puzzle, let us look at threats in puzzle position. Rook takes bishop. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook takes bishop. Rook takes rook. Rook takes rook. d3. Rook to c1. Next, the threats are: queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn, check. Checks in this position are: queen takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Queen takes pawn, check. King to h7. Queen takes bishop. Rook to b8. Queen to a6. Let us go to the next puzzle. The threats are: knight takes bishop. Bishop takes knight. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Knight takes bishop. Pawn takes knight. d4. Bishop to h6. Knight to h5. Queen to g4. Pawn takes knight. Next puzzle, threats in puzzle position are: there are no threats in this position. Checks in this position are: knight to d8, check. Knight to d4, check. Answer to this puzzle is: knight to d8, check. King to d7. Knight takes pawn. King to e6. Knight to d8, check. Next, puzzle position vulnerabilities are: there are no threats in this position. Checks in this position are: bishop to b5, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Bishop to b5, check. King to d8. Bishop takes bishop. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are the threats. Queen takes pawn. Bishop takes bishop. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Bishop to c6. Let's see the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are: rook takes pawn. The checks are: queen to g7, check. Queen to h8, check. The puzzle is solved using rook to f4. g5. Knight to f1. Pawn takes rook. Knight takes queen. Let us go to the next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are: there are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. The best move in puzzle position is king to h5. King to e3. King to g4. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.